everyone, in this video I will review a contract letter related to employment contracts as final exam for English. But before we begin, let me introduce myself. My name is Nafisha Ramadhani, a 2024 law student at UPN Veteran Jakarta from Local E with student ID 241061181. This is the overview contract that I will review. The type of contract that I will review is an employment contract. Before going into details, of course, we must know what an employment contract is. So, an employment contract is a formal agreement that outlines the terms, responsibilities, and rights of both the employer and employee, providing clarity and protection for both parties. The employment contract I review is the one between William Smith and Illinois American Water Co., which is effective from March 5, 2019. If you want to see more closely, you can scan the barcode that will lead you to the PDF document. Now let's take a closer look at the details of the contract. The first point is the employment contract is between William Smith and Illinois American Water Co. William Smith is hiring Illinois American Water Co. for the position of marketing manager with a contract duration of 3 years. The agreement was formalized on March 5, 2019, as seen in their mutual acceptance of the terms. The next part is performance of duties. The performance of duties clause in this contract stipulates that employees are expected to allocate full attention and time to company affairs so that employees focus fully on their duties during working hours. This clause also clarifies that the employer will not assign tasks outside the scope of the employee's position, which helps prevent employers from assigning tasks that are not relevant to the scope of the employee's job. However, this clause gives employers the right to change employee roles and responsibilities, including through reorganization or promotion. Any change in an employee's pay scale due to a change in responsibility or promotion is at the sole discretion of the employer. The duties and responsibilities section clearly outlines the employee's key tasks and responsibilities for developing and implementing marketing strategies, providing a comprehensive overview of the role. This detailed list covers both the strategic and operational aspect of the position, allowing the employee to clearly understand what is expected in terms of tasks and outcomes to be achieved. Compensation and benefits in this agreement explains that the employee will receive a monthly salary of $2,500 with monthly evaluation and possible salary increase as determined by the supervisor. The salary will be paid twice a month, on the 1st and 15th of each month. Additionally, the employee will be entitled to other similar benefits as employees in the same rank and position. Confidentiality and unauthorized disclosure. The section outlines the employer's obligation not to disclose, share, or use any confidential information related to the employer's operations or business, both during and after employment. Confidential information includes, but is not limited to, copyright materials, costs, inventions, and technical matters, except for information that is publicly known. The employee is prohibited from copying or altering any confidential information without the employer's written consent. After the employment relationship ends, the employee must immediately return all confidential documents or materials to the employer. The unauthorized disclosure clause explains that if the employee, during or after the termination of employment, discloses or threatens to disclose any confidential information, the employee will be considered in violation of this agreement. In this case, the employer has the right to seek an injunction to prevent the employee from disclosing or further disclosing, in whole or in part, the confidential information. Additionally, the employer is entitled to pursue other legal remedies as deemed appropriate for any loss and or damage incurred as a result of the unauthorized disclosure made by the employee during or after the termination of employment. Remedies clause explain that if the employee violates any of the provisions set forth in the confidentiality and authorized disclosure section, the employer reserves the right to immediately terminate the employee's employment and cease all obligations to make further payments under this agreement. The employee acknowledges that the employer could suffer permanent and irreversible damage due to a violation of these provisions and therefore agrees that the employer is entitled to any legal remedy or injunction deemed appropriate by the employer or a court of law in response to any actual or threatened breach of this agreement. The amendment of agreement clause states that any change to the agreement must be mutually agreed upon in writing by both parties and must include an effective start date for the amendment. Termination of agreement clause outlines the condition under which the employment may end, including mutual termination, the employee's death, or serious misconduct by the employee. If either the employer or employee wish to terminate the agreement for reasons such as the completion of the employee's a side project or seeking new employment, advance written notice is required, 5 days from the employer and 7 days from the employee. This clause provides clear guidelines for both parties on how to proceed in ending the employment relationship. Next is notice. This notice clause stipulates that any notice required or permit under this agreement must be made in writing and sent by registered mail to the employee's home address or to the employer's principal headquarters, depending on the case. It clearly states that notice must be in writing, ensuring they are documented and accountable. The use of registered mail ensures that the notice is traceable and officially received. Compliance with employer's rules clause requires the employee to adhere to all of the employer's rules and regulations, including conduct standards as outlined in the employer's policy. This ensures that the employee follows established guidelines and behaves in accordance with the company's expectations during their employment. The close return of employer property in this employment contract outlines the employee's obligation to return all company property at the end of the contract or termination of employment, whether voluntary or involuntary. This includes items such as keys, company cards, identification cards, computers, company credit cards, and documents. The employer reserves the right to take legal action for any loss or damage resulting from the employee's failure to return company property after the employment ends. This clause aims to protect the employer's assets. The non-assignment clause states that the employee's rights and interests under the contract cannot be transferred or encumbered by others, either voluntarily or involuntarily, and cannot be claimed by creditors. The next section is ownership of social media contacts and intellectual property. The ownership of social media contacts clause grants the employer exclusive ownership of all social media contacts acquired by the employee during their employment, including those from platforms like email, blogs, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. And for the ownership of intellectual property, clause states that any intellectual property created by the employee during their employment belongs to the employer. The employee must notify the employer of any such creations and waives any moral rights related to the work, allowing the employer and its affiliates to fully control and use the intellectual property. Successors clause ensure that the terms of the agreement remain legally binding not only on the employer but also on any individual or company that acquires the employer's assets or business, whether through a sale, merger, or other means. The entire agreement section states that this agreement includes all agreements between the employer and employee, replacing any prior agreements, whether oral or written. Next is severability clause ensures that if any part of the agreement is found to be invalid or unenforceable, it will not affect the rest of the agreement. The invalid provision will be excluded, but the remaining terms will remain valid and enforceable. Applicable law clause specifies that the terms of the agreement will be governed and interpreted based on the laws of the state of Illinois. This ensures clarity regarding the legal framework for resolving any disputes or issues related to the agreement. The copy of agreement clause is the final part of the employment contract, confirming that the employee has received a signed copy of the agreement from both parties. This clause also includes a formal acknowledgement statement where the employee signs the agreement and the employer executes it on their behalf, with the date specified in the document. This ensures that both parties understand and agree to the terms outlined. In conclusion, the employment contract between William Smith and Illinois American Water Co. outlines the key terms, including the employee's duties, compensation, confidentiality, and intellectual property rights. It ensures protection for both parties, with provisions for termination, amendments, and handling violations. The contract also covers the return of company property and ownership of social media contacts, providing clarity and legal safeguards for the employer and employee. Okay, so that's all for my reviewing employment contract. Thank you for listening. Bye bye.